Do you remember when ECW invaded Monday Night Raw?
Remember when the ring broke and Kimona did a striptease?
Do you remember when Paul Heyman told JBL that the only reason he was the WWE champion was because Triple H didn't want to work Tuesdays?
Hi, I'm Jaymes Mansfield giving you the queen of extreme, Francine.
And I'm Sylvia Nyxx giving you Studley Dudley, the quintessential stud muffin, Joel Gertner?
Sure.
Ugh, gross.
In today's episode, we are bringing you to the extreme. It's like a deodorant ad in the 90s.
We're talking, of course, about one of the most instrumental brands in wrestling history.
Instrumental, true. It was filled with a bunch of tools.
It was something that took professional wrestling and made it dangerous, made it edgy, and made it so that people in their mid-20s didn't have to be ashamed about watching cartoons.
Only for them to grow up to be in their mid-40s and be ashamed to watch wrestling.
We're talking, of course, about the 5 worst aspects and moments in ECW history.
Number 5 is actually a very controversial moment in the history of wrestling when Shane Douglas won the NWA Championship.
Shane Douglas won an 8-man tournament for the vacant NWA World Heavyweight Championship in the ECW Arena, which was a bingo hall in Philadelphia.
Back when it was Eastern Championship Wrestling.
And upon his winning, he took the belt and cut a promo. So he was listing all of the legends that have held the NWA Championship in the past. Orville Brown, Lou Thesz, Harley Race, Ric Flair, and he said, throwing the belt down at the same time, that this championship didn't mean anything anymore.
Well, I wouldn't say that much. He put it in these words: they could all kiss my ass.
God. Thing.
God.
And a lot of people view this as an incredibly bad thing for the lineage of wrestling's original World Heavyweight Championship. But the direction that wrestling was going at the time, I think this was necessary to shed...
It definitely injected some more life into what was considered a dying, sports form.
Right. I mean, think about what's happening at the time. Nirvana was at the top of the charts. Alternative was in. And people were getting sick of the norm, the bland. And in WWF at the time, you had gimmicks that were outrageous, like Max Moon and...
Bear in mind, it was the lowest ratings WWF had in that point.
And so I view this as ECW, Paul Heyman's way, and Shane Douglas's way. He would eventually become known as the franchise. Their way of telling everybody that wrestling needs to be cool and wrestling needs to bridge the gap between what we knew it as and what the future would hold. Thanks to this moment, thanks to Shane Douglas throwing that NWA World Heavyweight Championship down, we finally saw blurred lines in what is real and what is not. Granted, it is a great disrespect to a championship that, thanks to Cody Rhodes and Nick Aldis, is finally getting the spotlight that it once held and deserved.
And it also... people don't look at it, it severed the tie between NWA and ECW, which also took a lot of jobs away from men that were in ECW.
True.
They couldn't work that territory anymore.
Yeah, this ended the territory days. They were the first organization that put a spotlight on wrestling styles that would become known as the norm. Oh, God, it's too warm for this. I gotta...
All right, let's go change. Wow, Sylvia, you don't look that much different.
Well, Joel Gertner was getting hot. I couldn't be Studley Dudley anymore, so I decided to go with, I don't know, their cousin Picka. Picka Dudley.
Picka Dudley! Please welcome to the ring from Dudleyville, Picka Dudley! Now, at number 4 is another controversial moment in ECW's past.
And WCW's past. And WWE's past.
When Mike Awesome left as ECW champion to WCW.
Now this was a super fascinating instance because Mike Awesome was holding the ECW World Championship at the time. And Mike Awesome was arguably one of ECW's biggest assets, one of their greatest in-ring performers that they've ever had.
And he looked the most like something WWE actually would have signed. Like he was jacked.
He was.
6 foot tall.
So they had WCW signee Mike Awesome fight WWF guy Taz in an ECW ring for the ECW World Championship, where Taz would win, come to SmackDown with the ECW World Title.
And he fought Triple H, didn't he?
He fought Triple H.
Yeah.
Just kind of a fascinating thing all around, but you never, as a promotion, look what happened to WCW when Ric Flair jumped ship, you never want to lose your World Championship. And this is kind of a testament to where ECW started going wrong. You know, this suit coat is getting warm again.
All right, let's get changed for our next segment.
Yeah. I feel more natural now.
Same. Look, look, look. Sunny, Jenna Jameson.
They were both ECW girls.
They were. Okay, now number 3 is, oh boy.
Number 3 was the reason Kurt Angle never signed to ECW. Raven being the brooding emo kid that he was, this was before My Chemical Romance, so he was probably listening to more violent music. He crucified the Sandman.
Full on cross, tied to the ring ropes, Sandman spread eagle.
Everything.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the visual, his son in the back.
Yes. Yeah.
And Sandman's child in the back, because that was the storyline too, is that Raven was brainwashing his son to be against him.
Yes.
And he even got the Sandman's wife, Lori.
And because they were in Pennsylvania, the Golden Boy, the man who won 2 gold medals with a broken freaking neck, Kurt Angle, was actually in the audience that night, or on commentary, and he was considering signing to ECW. Little history on Kurt Angle. I once watched an interview on Metal Sucks where the journalist asked Kurt Angle what his favorite metal band was, and he said, "Buddy, I don't listen to anything that isn't on the Fish." This, to this man, is beyond me. But if Kurt Angle had signed with ECW, I think we would still have a new big boy in town. And maybe if you're trying to sign somebody who's a little,
So much to the point that after this, Raven actually issued a public apology in ring.
That kind of makes me lose a little respect for Raven, but we're in 2019 right now, so maybe in hindsight's 2020, this was still the mid-90s where...
Bear in mind, only a few years later, The Undertaker would be tying Stephanie McMahon to a giant symbol in the middle of the ring.
And that was, arguably, that storyline was worse, because Vince McMahon was...
being the secret power.
Yeah. So Vince McMahon wanted his own daughter crucified, but, I mean, and Kurt Angle still signed with them. I'm getting bored of this costume.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Next segment. Okay, so we're at number 2 now.
You know what I've started to realize? Every ECW wrestler dressed and looked the exact same.
So if you're wondering why the transformations haven't been that dazzling, that's why.
They had low budget. They were poor.
I mean, if you had an ECW shirt, some denim cutoffs, and some boots.
That's all you needed
You're
to
done.
be an ECW star.
You were set.
Okay, speaking of people who probably didn't have the means to afford wrestling gear, let's talk about how a 17-year-old kid found his way into an ECW show.
So, Paul Heyman books a tag team match, and one of the wrestlers doesn't show.
It was one of the Nasty Boys.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
And
no, you're
boy,
right.
were they nasty.
Yeah. These guys were actually, the Nasty Boys, side note, were notorious for legitimately kicking the shit out of their opponents in the ring. And they were really popular.
I hate that.
In WCW.
I hate that, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, these were the kinds of people that you would find in ECW and indie wrestling in general at the time.
Wait, isn't one of the Nasty Boys like a garbage person that books for like a certain territory now?
I think are you thinking about Ian Rotten and Axel Rotten?
Yeah.
No, those weren't the Nasty Boys.
Who were they?
The Nasty Boys were Brian Knobbs and Joey something.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right. I always get those two mixed. Everyone looks the same.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, they were both bigger men with blonde mullets, so yeah. New Jack has been known to attempt homicide from time to time.
He hobbies an attempted homicide. Let's get to the mass transit incident.
Okay.
So, the 17-year-old kid...
His name was Eric Koulas.
Yes.
Rest in peace. He's deceased now.
Is he?
Yes.
Oh my.
He found his way into the ECW arena and basically told the booker, like, hey, I'm a wrestler, and being ECW, they were like, well, okay. You know,
we got a spot to fill.
Right. No verification of age, no proof that he's ever wrestled in any indie circuit anywhere.
That's when, if you look at this kid, he's shaped at
No,
all.
he wasn't a
He
skinny
looked
boy.
like a child.
His gimmick for this match was a bus driver, which is why he was called Mass Transit.
Oh,
Yeah.
I hate that so much.
And so this kid told New Jack, who was, as we said, notorious for almost committing homicide in several matches. New Jack is not pleased. Actually, I hope you're not watching this, New Jack. Don't come after me. I love you. I'm your biggest fan.
I want to say they used a cheese grater on him.
They did. No. It was an X-Acto knife.
Oh, no.
He told New Jack to give me color. In wrestling terms, what give me color means is make me bleed.
And New Jack is not the person you want to tell to give you color.
Because New Jack will make you bleed out. New Jack took an X-Acto knife and cut too deep, and this poor kid started losing copious amounts of blood, wound up in the hospital that night, and I don't think he was released for a few days. And the family ended up suing ECW, which through some miracle, ECW got off the hook.
If you saw clips or stills from this match, like, it will turn you off to hardcore wrestling.
Yeah. And granted, I'm like, this is gonna make me sound like a hypocrite. I didn't like ECW for the hardcore aspect as much as I liked ECW for what they were doing and introducing new styles of wrestling.
I feel like that's partly my one common ground with ECW. Like, I can respect it for the great talents that came through it.
Yeah.
And there were moments of great wrestling that came out of it.
And good storytelling.
It was just bogged down with so much garbage.
There was a lot of garbage.
There was a stench that came from ECW that is hard to ignore.
Emulating, even to this day. But for some reason... Oh, this is a good segue into our number one.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. I've given up on wigs today.
We're done with wigs. I'm not changing my hair, so we have the Sandman. Oh, God. And I guess I'll be his wife, Lori. Pick that up. You'll live here.
Oh, so our number one.
Our number one ECW moment is...
when WWE relaunched ECW.
Well, what led up to it was that they released the Rise and Fall of ECW. And the
which was a great
sales
DVD.
were so massive from it. Like, they had really impressive DVD sales to where RVD decided to pitch to Vince McMahon a pay-per-view.
Yeah, the One Night Stand pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
And on this pay-per-view, they had a fantastic card headlined by, you know, Mike Awesome, Rob Van Dam, Sabu, Rey Mysterio in his OG ring gear, Eddie Guerrero's opponent.
Yeah, the guy that fought Eddie Guerrero.
Yeah, there were just so many good things that were happening. So they all agreed to do this one pay-per-view. Paul Heyman came out to introduce the show, and he cut this amazing shoot promo on Eric Bischoff, Edge, JBL, which we mentioned at the beginning of this episode. It was honestly just one of the best pay-per-views I've ever seen. Mostly because these guys weren't fighting for storylines, they weren't fighting for championships, they were fighting for legitimacy.
It was very much fun, like the nostalgia factor. Even watching it again now, it's like it still holds up as a very good pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about ECW, like even the little things like make you smile, like the hat guys in the audience.
Yeah.
Electra was in the audience. She got beer poured on her boobs by the Sandman.
The Dudley Boys with a flaming table.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much to love about it. And so, to capitalize on this success, WWE and the McMahon family says, why don't we just make this our third brand?
Let's get into it. Where does this third brand end up?
On the Sci-Fi Network, where we were given such gems of gimmicks as Kevin Thorne, who we mentioned in our first episode.
The Zombie.
The ECW Zombie.
Vince McMahon hit an alien.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
From what I gathered in research, I read that Paul Heyman was originally pitching it to be somewhat of like what NXT eventually became.
Right.
Whereas a third, like, undercard show.
Right. I mean, and that's where, like, you could definitely tell the Paul Heyman influences because he did have a little bit of creative control. He would sign in guys like CM Punk, who definitely 110% would have fit in with the original ECW mode. I'll forgive them bringing in Tommy Dreamer and Sandman and Sabu, because I truly don't think that you could have an ECW without, you know, the originals. But
also with the WWE at that time, there was no way they could pull off ECW programming.
No, there's no way they could get away with it. I mean, Linda McMahon was first starting her, like, senatorial bids, and she was gonna be, like, this big politician, and you can't have Extreme Championship Wrestling. It just wasn't meant to be, and to exploit something, it's like taking a movie that's a cult film like, I'll say Black Christmas, and then trying to remake it for the mainstream audiences.
And you're surprised to find out that it's crap.
Right. Like, it was a spark in time. It was a flash in the pan that should have stayed where it was. And ECW, if I think ECW would have continued on the route that they were going, they would have very much been a Ring of Honor, a Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, a Smark's Dream. As much as ECW was good, I think it's fair to say that they gave us a lot of crap in wrestling.
It was influential, and some of the things and storylines they put on did help give a adrenaline boost to wrestling that desperately needed in the 90s.
Yeah.
I will see you there.
Yes, but a lot of it has not aged well.
No.
At all.
It's aged very poorly, but
no.
That goes the same for a lot of wrestling products from WCW onward to WWE.
True.
Some haven't aged nearly as poorly.
And you know, I would much rather see a Dueling Canes match between Sandman and Sabu than watch Max Moon wrestle ever again.
Leave Conan alone.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, my name is Sylvia Nyxx.
And I'm Jaymes Mansfield.
And until next time, we're tagging out.
Click here and see wrestling's hottest guys. Or see our top 5 worst gimmick matches. Come on, click it. You know you want to. If you don't click it, I'll book you in a death match with Terry Funk. So click it.